All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome to the X Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and for the next 4 hours, I'm your host and your guide as together we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern on the X Zone Broadcast Network and our growing family of broadcast affiliates right around the world. If you'd like to give us a call, toll free, 1-800-610-7035. My email address is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, X Zone Radio TV, and our main website is www.xzoneradiotv.com. My first guest tonight, X Zone Nation, is Linda Zlotnick, who goes by the professional name of Moonrabbit. Now, Moonrabbit has been studying, teaching, and practicing astrology as her full-time profession in Minneapolis-St. Paul metropolitan area since 1974. Now, she was trained by Zipporah Dobbins. Hers is the longest-standing professional astrology practice in the region. She focuses on her work on helping people understanding themselves and the planetary cycles that affect them. Now, in addition to her vibrant and growing professional practice, Moonrabbit developed a 3-year training program teaching students to develop their astrological interpretation and communication skills. Her website is www.astrologybymoonrabbit.com. And Moonrabbit, welcome to the X Zone.
Thank you very much.
So tell me, what was it in your past that put you onto your present course as a professional astrologer?
Well, I was lucky enough when I was at college to meet somebody who had been studying astrology for some time. And she just asked me for my birthday, looked up a bunch of things in a book, and told me 3 things that were so stunningly accurate, I kind of decided I had to check this out for myself. So that was in the early 70s. I went to the public library, and there was one book on astrology in the library, and I took it out and I started teaching myself.
Wow. How has astrology personally enriched your life? How do you use it? I mean, not as a professional astrologer, but in your day-to-day life.
All right. Well, I have to say it probably took me about 12 years of studying and doing charts for people before I could actually use it in my own life, because I think it's human nature to try and figure out what's going to happen, and we all want to know what the future can bring, which astrology doesn't really exactly tell us. So how it helps me in my everyday life now is that I generally know various cycles that are going on, and I kind of get a general sense about how that's going to affect not just me, but the people around me. And so it keeps a perspective on things that I wouldn't normally have.
All right, but but how does that help you in your day-to-day life?
Okay, well, I'll give you 2 really concrete examples. So the planet of communication a couple days ago just went into a 3-week period of time where it's going retrograde.
And which planet is that?
Common.
Which planet?
Mercury.
Okay.
It's very, very common for miscommunications, misunderstandings, mix-ups. And I just came back from an appointment where the person was 15 minutes late, and they apologized and said, this normally doesn't happen, but I had a snafu with my calendar. And so it's really, really common during that 3-week period of time when Mercury is retrograde for computer problems, all kinds of communication and transportation issues to arise. And just having a heads up that this would be normal during this time makes it a little bit more bearable. The second example I want to give you is that there's a full moon coming up on the 7th, and it's a full moon lunar eclipse. so it acts like, I call it a full moon on steroids.
Ooh.
And so it's really possible that people are going to be kind of wacky and really emotional and reacting to everything like crazy. And knowing that keeps me from getting caught up in it. It gives me an interesting perspective on it. It helps me counsel people, because in a few days they'll wonder what they were so upset about.
Gotcha. You and I have to take a commercial break. Please stand by.
Okay.
Exonation Moonrabbit is our special guest this hour. Her website is www.astrologybymoonrabbit.com. Once again, www.astrologybymoonrabbit.com. This is the X Zone. My name is Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. If you'd like to send us an email, our email address is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. The X Zone is a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern on the X Zone Broadcast Network and our family of broadcast affiliates. To listen to the show 724, 365, just go to www.xzoneradiotv.com. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away. Exonation, Linda Zlotnick is my guest this hour. She goes by the professional name of Moonrabbit. She is a professional astrologer. Her website is www.astrologybymoonrabbit.com. That's www.astrologybymoonrabbit.com. Moonrabbit, what is the significance of an eclipse in astrological terms?
Well, in the ancient days, eclipses were associated with the death of a king. And, astrology has been around for hundreds of thousands of years. But now we see them as periods of time where...
Whoa. Hundreds of thousands of years?
Well, maybe that's a little bit too long. I know that the Babylonians... were, aware of eclipses and that there's some records.
All right, so why don't we just say in ancient times, because hundreds of thousands of years, you're back to the time of the dinosaurs. Okay.
No, yes, I'm sorry. That was a misspoken moment.
All righty.
So now people see eclipses as periods of time where there's kind of this intense change or new beginning. And sometimes during eclipses there'll be earth changes. So we've just seen a lot of volcanic activity, and astrologers would correlate that to the eclipse cycle that's coming up. And sometimes it's different kinds of activity, water activity, and things like that. But the symbolism of an eclipse is a heavenly body that gets cast in shadow, and then the shadow becomes illuminated. And so we believe in astrology that things that have been brewing under the surface typically get pushed up into the open.
Now, going back to December the 21st, 2012, a lot of people thought it was the end of the world. Some other people thought it was the convergence. A lot of people thought that it was an astrological sign. What, as far as your professional opinion as an astrologer is concerned, Moonrabbit, what was the significance of December the 21st, 2012?
Well, as far as I know, the Mayan calendar ended at that time. And people believed that it meant that the world as we knew it would end. So it wasn't really an astrological event. It was related more to something that had been discovered that was part of a small part of a larger picture, which was the calendar of the Mayans.
All right. So how can somebody listening today, if they were to contact you for you to do their astrological chart, how could the information that you give them help them in their day-to-day life? Or in their professional life, for that matter?
Excuse me?
I said even in their professional life.
Yes. So what astrology is really good at is helping people with timing events. And so, is it a good time to make a job change or not? Is it a good time to buy or sell a house? Is it a good time to try and publish a book? So there are various cycles, and one of the things that I do really specifically is that most of the cycles repeat. So we can go back and we can talk about previous times and the kinds of experiences that people were having during those times. And if that cycle is current, then there can be some foresight or understanding about what might be happening currently and how to kind of make things work out favorably by using the timing of the planets.
So how could a professional, let's say a small business owner, if he was to get his astrological chart done, how could his chart help him in his day-to-day business and help his business grow?
Okay. So I'm going to give you an example. Okay,
sure.
So I had these two women owned a small shoe store where they sold really high-end Italian shoes. And they were in an expansion cycle. And they came in to see me, and we talked a little bit, and I said the only thing that can go wrong under an expansion cycle is if you bite off more than you can chew. And so they were in a retail space in a small little space downtown, and this space next to them came open, and it tripled their square footage. And they decided to go ahead and do it. I didn't make the decision for them. I just said you have to be careful not to get overextended, and it was too much.
Oh, gosh.
Okay, so I guess this was not a great example because it was an example of how astrology didn't really help, but it might have helped, if they had kept things smaller.
Give me an example of where astrology helped a person to become successful.
Well, it might be able to help somebody make changes at the right time that could improve their situation. But I don't know. We believe in astrology that you have to see signs of inherent success in the birth chart. So there are two distinct areas that astrology covers, and one is what was set in motion when you were born, and the other is what's going on currently. And the birth chart, which is what was set in motion when you were born, it doesn't absolutely commit, oh yes, this person will have to be successful, but there are certain indicators, okay? And so that would have to be present in order, for a person to be successful, and then the timing could be applied to that birth chart.
Interesting. So what if a person wants to know what's in their future? How can astrology help them?
Well, I have to say that every astrologer probably works a little bit differently.
Okay.
And there are systems of astrology, actually, like in India, that are extremely predictive. So almost everybody in India, the parents, when they have a baby, they'll take the birth chart to an astrologer, and that person will tell them how many, what the profession is for the child, the marriage, when the child will get married, how many children they'll have, things that we wouldn't dream of doing in this country.
But is that Vedic astrology?
Yes, that's Vedic astrology.
Okay.
That's exactly right. And, it's based on kind of a whole, the astrological chart it isn't even the same. It doesn't look the same. It kind of does. It resembles it, but it's a whole different system than the astrology that we practice, most people practice in the U.S. And so your original question, I have to say that everybody is probably a little bit different, and I'm more oriented towards talking about the kinds of opportunities that cycles bring, the kinds of lessons that they bring. Sometimes I'll talk about events because some cycles will often bring certain events, but I don't really see that astrology can foretell the future in a precise way. Do you know what I mean? Like you read about in the paper, or
so are you saying that the astrology in the paper isn't accurate?
It's usually written by people who are writers as opposed to real astrologers.
Well, because I remember as a child reading the newspaper, and it was done by Sidney Omar, and I believe he was a very well-known
Yes.
astrologer.
He was a real astrologer.
Yeah.
But now all the syndicated papers, I don't think they have real astrologers
Wow.
writing that.
So tell me, how long did you studied, let me see, if my memory serves me correct, you studied astrology for 12 years before becoming a professional?
No. It took me 12 years to actually be able to apply what I was understanding to my own life.
I see. And did
So
you take it?
asked me, how did you use it in your life? And I think the first 12 years that I was studying, I kind of flailed around because I couldn't find personal meaning.
I gotcha.
From what was going on.
Now,
so
did you take any professional training, or were you all self-taught?
Yes. So I was self-taught until I got interested in 1974, and then I found a teacher in 1977, and that was Dr. Zipporah Dalvins, who had a practice in L.A., and she had month-long intensives where you would live at her house, and you would study astrology, 24/7.
What was that like?
It was probably one of the happiest, most exciting times of my life.
Really?
There were people from all over the country and a few people from California, and we just, she taught us a basic system, and we just practiced and studied and practiced and learned from each other and went through a testing at the end.
And how many students would there be at the same time at the place, the doctor's house? Well,
she ran those periodically. My group probably was between 12 and 15 people.
Wow. So it was really basically a very small group with hands-on experience with a professional.
Yes, very personalized.
Wow.
And now, there's a Kepler College, there's a university where people can train to become astrologers. There's online courses all over the country where people can train to become astrologers. So that was a long time ago, and things have really, really grown considerably.
What is the average age of a person who comes to you for their astrological charts?
Oh, I would say midlife people, but I have some college students. I have a few people in their 80s, but I would say for the most part, working people, midlife, in their 50s.
So people who want to apply the information that you give them into their daily routine or their daily life to make it more advantageous and better for them.
Correct.
Gotcha.
The other thing that I really like to do, and I did this because I have 2 children, and I use their birth charts to help understand them. And so I do get a lot of new mothers as well, because I really enjoy talking to them about, who this young being is that's come into their world.
Does reincarnation play a part in any of the charts that you do?
There is a specific aspect of astrology, the north and south nodes of the moon, that are related to the inheritance that you bring forward from past lives and the path that your soul is on for this particular incarnation. So it's a part of every reading.
Oh, but what happens if someone doesn't know that they've had a past life or they don't believe in past lives? Do you still tell them what this chart says?
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't it? Interesting. All right, dear, you and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. Please stand by.
Okay.
X-Zone Nation, our guest this hour is a Moonrabbit. Her website is www.astrologybymoonrabbit.com. And we'll be back on the other side of this news break as we continue here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My name is Rob McConnell. Don't go away.
This is Elizabeth Joyce with Stargazing, week of October 6th through the 12th, 2014, for the X-Zone. At Yom Kippur, we begin the full eclipse season, as well as Mercury retrograde and a Uranus-Sun opposition. This face-off indicates a time of trying to change the status quo while simultaneously trying to keep everything in balance, along with keeping your monthly bills paid. Whatever Uranus is involved in, you usually lose something in order to gain something of more value. These eclipses will have far-reaching consequences. This energy promises to be a major positive influence on national and global power struggles. Mercury is now retrograde through October 25th. This presents many opposites as Aquarius, the moon, wants to communicate and share with Saturn in Scorpio. And Saturn always wants to hole up and seeks privacy. Rest up this week because the intensity is going to pick up as we move into the red moon lunar eclipse on Wednesday. On Tuesday, the sun is opposite Uranus, and that means anything can happen. Be careful where you step your feet, when you're behind the wheel of a car, or when you write or say something to your social media. On a personal level, Wednesday's eclipse is a watermark and signifies the end of a cycle, be it 7 years, 14 years, or 28 years. This is a week of completions rather than initiations, freedom, release, and changes in the air. On October 8th, the full moon is a total lunar eclipse creating a red moon and can be seen in the Pacific and Western North America. It occurs in Libra, which asks you to look deep within your emotions and rebalance your independent needs with your sharing needs in your relationships. Consider where you are out of balance in terms of partnerships and take care of your own needs. Remember that Mercury is retrograde until the 25th, so do not carve your decisions in stone. Adaptability is more important than knowing exactly how things in your life will work out. Venus is opposing Uranus now. This can have a we are friends or lovers tone to it. Uranus wants freedom and Venus wants partnership. This can be exciting or disruptive. Expect the unexpected. Uranus has a lot of fun, but planning is not its strong suit. In the next 2 weeks, the time between eclipses brings up hidden emotions. Make time for your emotional needs. On Friday, communication planet Mercury slips back into Libra for the remainder of the retrograde cycle. You can meet a lot of new people in the next coming week, but remember, all of them probably are just passing through. Practice communicating in a diplomatic way. People offer to help you, and they're helping themselves just as much. Be the catalyst for goodwill and get problems solved at the same time. People will find you, and they may try to shake you down for help or advice or favors. Some of these requests will be fun, and it's always flattering to be asked.
And for a private one-on-one consultation with Elizabeth Joyce, visit her website at www.new-visions.com. That's www.new-visions.com. Moonrabbit is our guest this hour, Exonation, www.astrologybymoonrabbit.com. And Moonrabbit, I understand that you give astrology courses.
Yes.
Tell me about it.
For people who want to learn basically to read horoscopes, but also to understand themselves better.
How long does your course take?
Well, I have one group of students that's been studying for 4 years.
Wow.
And but traditionally people sign up for a 12-week course. If they like it, they sign up for another 12-week course, and then we just keep going.
So, you've got, what's the longest student you've got? 4 years?
I would say there's one student in this class that's been 5.
All right, so
in this current group that's been 5 years.
So, what would a student at 5 years still need to learn?
Well, I can tell you that after 40 years, I'm still learning about astrology.
Wow.
So there are so many subtleties. There are so many new thoughts and fields being developed of how astrology is being applied. It really is kind of an endless source of interest.
What is the most fascinating story you can share with us about your astrological profession?
Fascinating in what way?
Well, something that's very interesting, something that you were able to share with someone that changed their life.
Okay. Well, let's see. I could tell you like a dozen stories, but I'm going to pick this particular one. Is that somebody who had been seeing me for a number of years came because she was contemplating getting married. And she had the permission of the other person and the birth date of the other person. And, the relationship was fairly serious, and they were starting to make plans. And I took a really big risk because I had studied the two charts, and they were really highly incompatible. And so basically, I talked about the ways in which they were different and what they would look like over time. And she asked my opinion, and I said not to do it. And then about 3 years later, she came back and she thanked me because she had met somebody who made her like really, really happy, where it was really easy and it wasn't a constant struggle. So, I think that was something that we could consider as having changed somebody's life.
As you know, and I'm sure that other astrologers are aware of this, and I'm sure you get asked this question a lot. Since Pluto has been discounted as a planet, how does that affect astrology?
Well, it really doesn't. So astronomers and astrologers have been at cross purposes for a very long time, although originally astrologers and astronomers, they were, practicing the same thing. But astrologers continue to use Pluto. It's a very, very important planet. And, it was, we think of it as being demoted, but not in our field.
So what is the significance of Pluto?
Well, it's the planet that has to do with regeneration, with destruction, what can apparently on the surface be destruction, but it's kind of like compost, is that it can create new growth and can create new beginnings. And so it reveals in a person's birth chart an area where they have a potential to transform something that can be problematic into a strength.
Now, when I think of the planets, I think of Jupiter as being the largest, the most powerful. Is it?
Well, the sun, but Jupiter is the second largest planet. And everybody likes Jupiter because it's the planet of opportunity, and it's associated with good fortune, and it's associated with personal growth, and it tends to have a very, very good reputation. But it can lead people to excess, and it can lead people to overextension, and it can sometimes create a feeling of well-being where people kind of slow down their effort and things don't really turn out as well as they'd like.
So you classify the sun as a planet?
It is the center of the solar system. I mean, it is. We use it in astrology as the identity or consciousness planet.
So I thought that the planet, okay, well. So if we're looking at the night sky, or if we're looking at a chart, is that why they call it a sun chart?
Well, the charts that astrologers use have the sun, moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, etc. So the sun is the central. It's when somebody says, "What sign are you?"
Yeah.
They're asking about your sun sign.
All right. So
it's an integral part of astrology.
Wow. Okay. Interesting.
Most people will want to know about your moon sign, but when you make a horoscope, you're kind of taking a snapshot of the 10 planets for the date and time and place that you were born.
So you take this.
So the sun was in a sign of the zodiac. Each planet was in a sign of the zodiac. And that's what you're looking at.
How often is the astrology based on the solar system wrong?
Well, I think that's a hard question to answer because, it's prone to human interpretation.
Okay.
And so how often is astrology wrong?
Yeah.
That's hard to say.
All right. Well, let me ask you this then. If astrology, as I as I've been told, is an exact science, quote unquote, because you use the planets, the date, the time, and so on. How come there are so many different versions of astrology instead of just one?
Well, it isn't a science. So the part of it that is everybody has in common is that, basically you get a computer to tell you the positions of all the different planets in a particular horoscope. But then it's open to interpretation. And people have developed all these different systems of interpretation. So, the Chinese base it on the birth year that you're born. So you could be a rabbit or an ox or a rat. It's completely different, just like Vedic astrology is completely different, Hawaiian astrology. All these different systems developed by people gazing at the stars, noticing certain patterns, studying those patterns, and then the astronomy came along and they added the scientific part.
Right.
That, it took this long for a planet to move through this constellation. But the meaning of all that is open to interpretation. And so you have so many different points of view. And because it's an unregulated field, anybody can write a book about a discovery that they made, and
right.
People can follow them or not follow them.
But I'm having a little bit of a problem here understanding the classification of the sun as a planet when everyone else looks at it as a star.
Well, I don't know how to clarify that for you. I just know that astrologers have been using the sun in the horoscope as the source of the person's identity.
Okay. Because you see, what I'm thinking of, if you're looking at the sun as a planet, then the sun should be revolving around something else instead of stationary and having the gravitational pull to keep all the planets in an orbit.
Yes. So the kind of astrology that most people in America practice is we create a birth map with the Earth at the center of it, even though we know that the Earth isn't the center of the solar system.
Wow. Earth at the center. Is that because the chart is being done on this planet?
Yes. And there are astrologers who do heliocentric astrology, where the sun is the center. So, there are so many versions of astrology that there are people who say, well, you can't do that, and it's wrong.
Yeah. So what would happen? What would happen if there's a colony on Mars and a child is born on Mars? How would the present-day astrology apply to that child?
It would have to be adapted. It would have to be adapted because we use location, latitude and longitude, but that wouldn't be relevant on Mars, would it?
So what would happen in the case of an orphan where you do not have the place, date, and time of birth?
Right, okay. So, I've had people who, have come here from other countries where they didn't have a birth certificate or they didn't have a time of birth.
Right.
And it's very, very hard to do charts for them. If you don't have a birthday, it's very, very difficult to do charts. There's a system in astrology that's called rectification. And it works backwards. You have to have kind of a mature person because it works backwards, accumulating important dates in that person's life. And then if you get enough of those, you can kind of figure out the person's time of birth. I don't do that. It's too complicated. I believe somebody will invent a computer program at some point that will do that. So if you have a birth date, you have something to work with. But if you don't, then it's probably better for the person to get a tarot reading or see a psychic.
What happens if the person is born on a leap year?
Oh, they have a birth chart. There's no problem with that at all.
So it doesn't affect every. Like if somebody goes to an astrologer that are born on the 29th of February or the 28th of February, would that chart remain the same for the duration of their lives?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Very good question, though.
I'm known for my good questions. All right. Let me see here. So once a person takes your once a person takes your course, they have the option of advancing to your next level or continuing on their own.
Right, and most most cities have meetup groups. There's a lot of different ways to learn astrology. People learn it through books.
Right.
There's conferences that happen, national and international conferences that happen. There's a lot of different ways to be involved with astrology.
You and I have to take our final break. Please stand by. And that was my producer just reminding me that it's break time. Thank you, Craig. I kind of knew that ahead of time, buddy. No, it wasn't in my chart. I just kind of knew it. All right, Moonrabbit, please stand by. You and I will be back on the other side of this commercial break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Worldwide toll-free 800-610-7035. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, X Zone Radio TV. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. Moonrabbit is our special guest, www.astrologybymoonrabbit.com. We'll both be back on the other side of this break as we wrap up this hour. Don't go away. www.astrologybymoonrabbit is the website for my guest this hour, Linda Zlotnick, who goes by the professional name of Moonrabbit. She is a professional astrologer in the St. Paul metropolitan area, in Minneapolis, St. Paul area. And once again, her website, astrologybymoonrabbit.com. One final question for you. Does astrology speak to the growth of the soul?
Yes, it certainly does.
How?
The idea is that every individual, their higher self picks the moment of birth, the date and the place of birth, and the family of birth as a way to progress or develop their soul's journey in a particular lifetime. And so every incarnation is seen as a gathering of experience that really allows the soul to mature and to move forward.
So do we bring any of our past incarnations with us when we come back? And does that reflect anything within the current life and how the reading is given by the astrologer?
Well, so as I mentioned before, there's a specific point in everybody's chart, the south node of the moon, that is associated with what we might call unfinished business from past lives. So
I was just going to ask you, you said the moon, and the moon isn't a planet, so how does the moon affect the astrological reading?
No, this is the south node of the moon.
South node of the moon.
It's a point in space that astrologers use.
But it seems that with astrology, the eclipses play a part. And I'm trying to understand why an eclipse would play a part if the moon isn't represented in any of the planets of the astrological reading.
So just like the sun, you didn't understand that the sun, astrologers use the sun and the moon. We use the luminaries. They're really key parts to the chart. So whether they're factually, astrology departs from pure science. It really does. And so astrologers consider the sun and the moon as planets. And they're a significant part of everybody's birth chart.
Now, when
people
you say
who are born on
luminaries,
eclipses-
when you say luminaries, isn't a luminary something that illuminates through through its own source? The moon is the moonlight is reflective of the sunlight.
Right, it's reflected, but it's considered one of the luminaries in astrology.
Wow. How has astrology ever been updated to meet with the current demands of society?
I think it's constantly being updated to meet with the current demands of.
But if it is, how come Pluto is still part of the reading, and how come the moon is looked at as a luminary, and how come the sun is looked at as a planet instead of a star?
Okay, so I think what you're saying is there's some science that astrology has kind of departed from.
Yeah.
Yes. And so when you say updated, I think the astrology that's practiced now is really, really different than the astrology that I studied 40 years ago.
All right, Linda, you and I have to say so long for tonight.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Exonation, www.astrologybymoonrabbit.com. That's www.astrologybymoonrabbit.com. And we'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. We'll be back. Don't go away.